The question I'm often asked is how are leaders navigating the challenges and opportunities of generative AI within their organizations? And here's the key trait that I've noticed they all share in common. These successful leaders were already creating a culture rich in trust, safety, and creativity long before the launch of ChatGPT in November 2022. By fostering an open environment that valued communication, open communication, where people could come to each other with ideas or challenges, ones where people were recognizing each other's accomplishments and really inspiring a shared vision, this type of culture not only encouraged innovation, but also ensured that it was shared so that it was sustainable and inclusive amongst everyone inside their organization. Now, these leaders are also people who do not wait for trends to dictate their strategies. Instead, they are already, like I said, fostering this culture of innovation that is really going to be ready for what comes next, even if you don't quite know what it is, because they're not fortune tellers who predict what's coming next, but they are experts in what we call foresight. Now, foresight is not a new concept. It's been a really important part of strategic thinking for over a century. And one of the earliest proponents of this idea was a writer whose name was H.G. Wells. Now, he was primarily known for his science fiction novels, but Wells was also a visionary thinker about the future. In his 1901 essay, Anticipations, he proposed the creation of what he called a Department of Foresight. Now, remember, this is the year 1901. This department's role, he said, would be to systemically explore future possibilities and really prepare society for changes that might seem really far away, but that we knew were going to be coming at some point within our lifetimes. Now, Wells really believed that by understanding these potential futures, societies could then better navigate the challenges and opportunities that they would be facing. His advocacy for foresight tells us one thing: the relevance and the importance of looking ahead, not just to predict future trends, but so that you can be somebody in a position to actively shape them and be aware of what might be on the horizon. I am thrilled to be sharing this new leadership series with you, where I'm going to take you behind the scenes into the many incredible individuals that I have the privilege of working with to share with you what they're doing, how they're navigating change as individuals, but also for people responsible for very large organizations and how they're helping other people navigate these changes as well. So our first guest as part of this leadership series is a foresight practitioner. He is the superintendent of Santa Ana Unified, the 15th largest school district in California, with 53 schools, almost 40,000 students, and 6,300 employees. He was named a 2019 TED Ed Innovative Educator of the Year. In 2020, Superintendent Almendarez was named CALSA's Region 6 Superintendent of the Year. He is widely recognized for his mentoring abilities, which have benefited so many individuals and leaders, myself included. He is one of the most sought after speakers on leadership, especially right now as people are navigating AI, and his insights really resonate across the globe. Under his guidance, Santa Ana Unified has cultivated a vibrant culture of innovation that is evident anytime you go on any of their social media platforms, where the many, many stories that everyone across their organization shares highlight all the continued advancements and innovations that are taking place, not just in teaching and learning, but across the entire organization. Now, this type of culture not only enhances education outcomes, but it also really sets a benchmark for leadership, not just in education, but across the board. If you've met Jerry or you've heard him speak, you have likely heard him say, if we want results, we can't keep doing what we've always been doing. So today, he's here with us to share the 5 shifts that he believes leaders need to make if you are going to navigate not just a world with AI, but whatever change comes after as well. So let's find out how he first stepped into a leadership role 30 years ago.
It was actually inadvertently. I never set out to be a leader in education. Education is my second career choice. I went to school to be an accountant, and very quickly after I graduated, discovered how much I did not like accounting work, sitting behind a cubicle all day and staring at a computer screen. And so at the time, my wife was going to school to be a teacher, and she says, get your transcripts analyzed and sub until you figure out what you want to do for for a career. So I got my transcripts analyzed, and because I had a degree in finance, I was able to teach math. And so it didn't even end up subbing because math was in such a high demand back when I was looking for a job. I got hired on as a permanent teacher in math, seventh grade at a middle school. And I remember walking in the class, my first day, I would get to the office, the secretary gives me the book that I'm using, hands me the keys and my room assignment, and that was it. So I'm nervously walking down the hall. Long story short is the kids come in. I don't know who was more nervous, me or them, but they look like me. And after a couple of days, we really connected, and I really didn't even feel like a job. It just felt like it was the right place to be. So I started fully jumping in the teaching profession, and over time, people started to recognize the work that I was doing and eventually tapped me on the shoulders and encouraged me to be an assistant principal and site administrator. So putting them off a few years, I thought, okay, maybe I do need to do that. And I went back and got my administrative credentials, and then I am getting the assistant principal job, and then the principal job, and then people saw what I did there and encouraged me to apply for district level positions, and fast forward to the superintendency now. So I was a director of HR, the assistant soup of HR, and then the superintendent, and now I'm in my 16th year as a superintendent.
Now, Jerry isn't alone in feeling this way. This is something that leaders like Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, talk about as well. They were never really angling for that next position. Instead, they were working as hard as they could in their current role to really prove they were the best because they wanted to be the best at what it is they were doing.
There was never a time where I thought the job I was doing, all throughout my 30 years of Microsoft, that somehow I was doing that as a way to some other job. I felt the job I was doing there was the most important thing. I genuinely felt it. And then, of course, it helped me get my next job. As I always say, somebody, when they ask me what's the best career advice, I say, look, don't wait for your next job to do your best work. I think sometimes we define our jobs narrowly. One of the managers I worked for sort of said to me, hey, what if you just did a thought experiment and sort of thought of your job not as your job, but as my job? And what would you do? That was like a very cool reframing. Then I was taking more of the challenges of my manager off their back so that I was sort of expanding my job, not waiting for my promotion or to be in their job. And it just naturally happened.
Satya and Jerry remind me of a quote from John F. Kennedy, where he says leadership and learning are indispensable to one another. Now, when I chat with Jerry, he is always sharing a book, forwarding me an article, or a member of his team is telling me something new that he has shared with them that inspired them to go and create something or try something or do something. Leaders who foster cultures of innovation have an inspiration that is infectious. And this really brings us to the first of Jerry's 5 leadership shifts.
It's not enough just to learn what you have to in order to improve the organization's performance. I could be the smartest person in the room, but not be able to roll out or facilitate the changes that I want to make. And so what I've discovered over time is, because I've made a lot of mistakes in that role as a leader, over time, it's evolved into not just being the lead learner, but being the inspirational leader. And that is an individual who embraces different ways of thinking, embraces different views of how to approach a rollout of an initiative, and to listen to those that you wouldn't normally listen to, and then highlight and showcase the work that is being done, and create an environment that is conducive to people wanting to do the work as opposed to having to do the work.
We aren't born leaders, and we aren't always born to be inspirational either. So let's ask Jerry, how do we practice becoming inspirational leaders?
To make this transition from being the lead learner to the inspirational learner, you have to be vulnerable. You have to take risks. You have to listen to diverse groups of opinion. You have to reflect on those strategies, and then model it in your sphere of influence, and then get feedback from people as you're rolling it out. I think of when ChatGPT first came out and I brought this information to executive cabinet, they looked at me and you could hear crickets, like I was some crazy man. And so then I thought, okay, well, let me show them what they can do or how the platform works. And as soon as I pulled it out and started to enter some prompts, the output that it was getting, now I got their attention. And so from there, I was like, okay, now that you guys understand and you see what I see, what are some ways that this possibly could impact your areas of work in the district? And so that's really how the seed got planted. I reflect on the fact that I'm of a different generation than that of what I'm serving. And so often find myself in rooms in meetings with people my generation who are having conversations about creating environments that we think are good for the younger kids or the younger generation. And we're looking at it through a lens that we were educated in. And oftentimes, that is not what works in today's environment. And so I had the ability to have colleagues and friends across the world, across the country, who are newer to the profession, but innovative researchers, thought partners that I gravitate towards, and they pull me into these spaces. And I remember being pulled into the TikTok environment as a superintendent. One of my friends were saying, if you want to know what kids are doing, you need to be in this space so you can see. That way you can begin to take that information and use it as you develop your plans for the outgoing years. And so reluctantly, I joined TikTok, and it was a foreign environment to me, and really the videos that I was observing weren't really meaningful to me. And then over time, by not giving up and just cycling through, I started to see teachers on there. And I thought, oh, okay. So then I started following teachers and started to see what they were, content that they were producing. But over time, the platform just started to get more intense with more videos. And then that's when I came across a ChatGPT video and was very intrigued on it. And I learned probably 2 days after it was publicly released, and was so curious that I went back home, logged on to the internet, and then did my own research. And when I discovered the people that were endorsing it were actually CEOs of Silicon Valley, I got more intrigued and knew that this was something probably special and cutting edge. And ever since then, I've been having conversations about it with anybody that will listen.
Now, one of the biggest mistakes that we see is not having a strong guiding vision for your organization. That's also why foresight is so important. Your vision shouldn't change with every single new technology. Instead, it should really be that constant North Star that really helps everyone stay focused. Your mission, your vision, your values are the things that provide clarity and give people the confidence to understand and also really put into context the changes that are happening around them for their community and for your organization. Now, when I first started with Jerry, one of the most beautiful lines from their vision was, "We want people to be architects of their life and learning." And these are not just words on a paper, which brings us to the next leadership shift he's going to share with us.
So the second shift is going from a vision statement to vision and action. And often, we spend a lot of time with community or district partners having conversations about the vision that each district or each organization wants to have. And then we get done, we celebrate it, and then we move on to the next thing. And that isn't going to work in today's environment. And so what we've come to the realization is that it has to be a vision that we're constantly engaging with, constantly having conversations about, and constantly calibrating. What does that mean to us? What does it mean to our students? What does it mean to our teachers in our community, to ensure that we're doing our due diligence and meeting the integrity of the work that was put into creating that vision. And that's where the transition going from vision statement to vision and action arrived. The characteristics that are the drivers for the work that we do, that were embedded into our graduate profile, and what we expect of all of our students when they leave Santa Ana Unified, is that students, number one, are architects of their own learning, that they are collaborative leaders, that they are global innovators, world-ready scholars, empathetic communicators, and community builders. And these are 6 characteristics that our community has really prioritize in what their expectations are of students as they leave Santa Ana Unified School District.
Now, if you are not following Santa Ana Unified social media accounts, we will tag them here for you because they are such an incredible daily inspiration for what's possible. They are one of my favorite accounts to follow. I think I follow them all across so many different platforms. And what I love about following these accounts even more is that they're stories from the field. It is impossible as a leader to see every single person every single day and to see all the incredible things that are happening across your organization. But when we encourage everyone inside our organizations to share stories, not only do you as a leader get to see what's happening, but so does your entire community and really the entire world. And I think it's such an important role for schools to play as sort of like the heart and center of their community, is to teach people not just about the future, but also how we're preparing this next generation of leaders within our communities as well. Now, one of the things you will have heard me share often, and that you also will hear from Santa Ana Unified, is that there's a reason the World Economic Forum links leadership with social influence as one of its trending skills. They could have also made them two separate skills, but they don't, because ultimately influence is trust. And trust, as Harvard professor and author Amy Edmondson shares with us, trust is the key to developing what we call psychological safety inside your organizations. Now, you might remember back in 2018, I actually did a research study on a school in San Diego called Design 39, where we looked at how they were using the design thinking method to create this incredible culture of innovation. I mean, this was a public school that had created a different type of schedule, that had teacher collaboration, that was teaching entrepreneurship way before ChatGPT. And it was because they were practicing foresight. They knew the skills that were going to be important for kids at that age going into the future. And here they are, here this technology is. And so back in 2017, 2018, when we were researching the school and looking at the practices that they had established and what was allowing them to sustain this culture of innovation, one of the things that really stood out was how many people had mentioned, I feel safe to share ideas. I feel safe when I have a problem. I know that I have other people who can support me in the work it is that I am doing.
You know, they would pose a question and we would all be at round tables, and it would be a mix of parents with LEDs or with administrators, and we were all brainstorming and we were all sharing our ideas, and we had our sticky notes and we were doing the vertical learning, you know, just like the kids did. And they were gathering those ideas, and at the end you saw this array of ideas, and we would share out those ideas. And then I know that leadership and the LEDs would then take those vertical whiteboards and we would see them in the spaces where the LEDs worked, and they were taking that input from parents, and they were taking the input, you know, from the staff, and they were creating. And I thought in that moment that there was a voice here that I felt like it's very different. The parent voice is very present in the space.
So this concept of psychological safety is an absolute number one criteria for having any kind of culture of innovation, because it's the only way you're going to empower everyone to be able to feel safe, to ask questions, to voice concerns or share ideas that they feel might not be something that everyone wants to hear. And of course, most importantly, to be able to then take that confidence and actually go and try some new ideas. The 2024 Microsoft Work Trend Index recently shared that these people who take the initiative to try AI tools as part of their work really credited their leaders and the culture that they had created. They were 61% more likely to hear from their CEO, or in this case, superintendent, and 40% more likely to hear from the leader of their particular department. Now, 53% of these individuals also shared that they were more likely to receive encouragement from leadership alongside training. Now, at Santa Ana Unified, they actually shared our self-paced hybrid course, the AI Bootcamp, across their organization. Inside the AI Bootcamp, their teams are not simply learning a laundry list of AI tools. They are actually practicing foresight and design thinking practices to then examine which AI tools are relevant to their work, what areas can AI be used to support their workflows, to be able to free their time so they can focus on what matters most. And what I really love about about our work there and with the AI Bootcamp and with Santa Ana is that it's not just limited to teaching and learning. Their leadership teams, their executive assistants, their maintenance teams, and really everyone in between is really involved in learning about AI. Because remember, this is not just a teaching and learning change. This is a community change. It's really a societal world change that we are all going through. So rather than sitting through these long workshops, these intensive sessions, they actually adopted a hybrid approach. And what we do is people will do elements of the course on their own time, and then we'll come together to meet for about 30 minutes every other week during regularly scheduled meetings to be able to share what people have been working on, insights, applications, questions, concerns, and to work through sort of any other ideas it is that the teams have. Now, like I said, the AI Bootcamp goes beyond teaching you about just AI. It's really also giving your teams the skills and strategies like foresight, facilitation, team building, and really helping you take your tools to turn them into teammates so that you can really make the decision about what should AI be doing, what should we as humans be doing, and how can we work better together. If you want to learn more about the AI Bootcamp experience, I will link it for you in the show notes, or send me a message and we can discuss if it's right for your organization. Now, the culture that Jerry and his team have nurtured is really the reason they can begin thinking about this third leadership shift that Jerry's going to share with us.
The third shift that we kind of reflect on is going from measurement to future impact. And as we began to develop the graduate profile and had conversations with our community, and as we were getting ready to roll it out, we quickly realized that we were creating a system not necessarily designed for the needs of students. And in Santa Ana Unified School District, we are unfortunately a lower performing district in Orange County, and the trends have kind of flatlined over time. And so what we discovered as we were engaging our students in our community in this conversation is that although the outcomes are important, we really needed to focus on what the future impact of that would be, what opportunities we're giving our kids. Our kids were telling us when we were doing our listening sessions that they wanted learning to be fun, they wanted to be impactful, and in essence, they wanted to be the architects of their learning. And so having that as one of our characteristics of the graduate profile, the conversation for us revolved around, well, what does that actually look like? Is it an assessment? Not necessarily. I mean, we've assessed our kids and we've been doing this for decades and we haven't seen much improvement. And so the lens that we're looking at it now is to be more engaging and more authentic with our kids and having outcome-based experiences, but not just starting with kids. We actually have to start with the adults, because the adults have to figure out ways to engage and make that learning more exciting for students. And so we've transitioned from actually focusing on measuring to actually giving students the opportunity to be architects of their learning, and what does the future impact of that learning look like and have on those students' future. The arts department and the film department are really the drivers behind embracing students being the architect of their own learning. And the excitement that you see in the students who engage in these AI platforms or this innovative state that we're in are really exciting. And when we capture those moments, we are so excited to share them on our social media platforms, because our intent behind doing that is to show our community, especially the community that was involved in helping with the graduate profile, showing them the work that is being done and what it looks like. So when we talk about students being the architect, here's an example of students operating in the metaverse, creating their own designs. Here's an example of our media students creating productions using artificial intelligence to help write scripts and to be thought partners in the development of what their storyboards are, not to replace them, but to be thought partners and help them. And I think that's what inspires me, is seeing the creativity coming from these students when these tools are being shared with them. That leads me to the fourth shift, which is the going from authority-centric to people-centric, and really focusing on people. As much as I'd like to think myself or executive cabinet have the answers, we really don't have the answers, and we have to be inclusive in that conversation. So when we're talking about rolling out a district initiative, it is better for us to be inclusive in this conversation. We can start with the guardrails that we've talked about in executive cabinet, but as we roll it out, we have to pull people in to say, okay, here's what we're thinking. How is that, how's the implementation, or how's the rollout going to impact you? And so when the way we engage people is a variety of different ways, is having these different opportunities for people to actually physically come together or virtually come together, but also through a term that we have coined called leading with social influence. And that is us being the architect of our storytelling, us being the controlling the narrative that is getting out there, and really providing a platform and a guide for our districts and our school sites to really align the work that they're doing with what our board priorities are and our graduate profile. So as you go on to our social media feeds, our request of our school sites is, if you see a characteristics like students being an architect of their own learning, and you capture that happening in a classroom with video or with pictures, take it and push it out, tag the district office and hashtag SAUSD graduate profile, so our community knows. And this is probably the most important one for me as a superintendent, because as we were having the graduate profile conversations, one of our leaders in our community said, Jerry, don't waste my time. I'm committing 7 months, 4 hours a session to you. I don't want to see this plan sit on a shelf like all the other ones I've been a part of. So please don't waste my time. Well, that interaction that I had with that community leader has never left me. And so every opportunity I get to engage with my leadership team or to engage with parents or community, we are talking about the board priorities, the graduate profile, and what that looks like in the classrooms and at our school sites. And so when we talk about going from authority-centric to people-centric, that means embracing their lens of the implementation, but also highlighting and showcasing the work that is happening in their school sites on our social media feeds for the entire world to see.
Now, these over here are just some of the examples of people across Santa Ana and how they are sharing their AI integration into their role. First of all, we have Fermin over here, who's the Director of Communications, and he's actually been training an AI chatbot, Sophia, who is going to serve as an extended AI member of the communications team, who's going to be ready to sort of answer questions anytime, anywhere. Next, I want to share with you the Family and Community Engagement team. They have really been making sure that parents and community members are just as informed and aware about what AI means for them, so that they are able to support young people as different challenges and things like that come up. And next, we have film teacher Eric Timmons, who shares stories almost every single day about how he's been using it in his work and with his students. The arts department, in fact, has probably been one of the absolute leading departments across Santa Ana Unified. And a lot of that had to do with the fact, again, they were really leaning into foresight and design thinking practices way before ChatGPT. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that this type of sharing around how you're using AI is actually really rare. The Microsoft Work Trend Index also shared that 52% of people who use AI at work actually don't share how they're using it at all. And 53% of people who use AI really worry that if I share how I'm using it, especially if it's like a really good way I'm using it, my most important work, it's going to make me look replaceable. And this is why leadership during these changes isn't always about the technology. It's, again, about the trust we have with our teams and how safe people feel as part of your organizational culture. And this really brings us to the final and perhaps most important leadership shift that Jerry believes we need to make.
Well, and I think that takes us to the fifth leadership shift that we've embraced, and that's going from secrecy or working in isolation to developing a culture of empathy and a culture of trust. And one thing that I've been a superintendent for 16 years and in education for over 30 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen organizations and departments work in isolation. And then you look at the assessment results in the US for the past 50 years, and you look at the PISA results, and what we've been doing hasn't changed. And we've thrown money, we've thrown new programs, we've thrown more staffing, and we haven't received the outcomes that we wanted. So we have to do things differently. And I think that is by being more inclusive and giving people permission to experiment, to fail, and to learn from those failures and try again. And we have to be the models of that as the executive cabinet, as superintendent. They have to see us being vulnerable. They have to see us saying, look, I don't know where this chat GPT or this AI platform is going. I don't know how to do it, but I'm going to try. And here's some things that I'm going to try with. How can it impact you? And so by creating these environments and this space for our people, it has just exploded to the point where we started small with our AI conversation with a small group of curious people, those early adopters. And over time, they've had a trickle effect on their networks where it got to the point where some of our teacher coaches came up to us and said, look, we have a lot of people that want to use this. I think it's time to have a conversation about some guardrails. And that's where our AI advisory committee was formed. It wasn't a committee that the superintendent said, we need to inform this and we're going to pull people together. This was my teacher coaches who actually train the teachers in the classroom coming to me and saying, hey, Mr. Superintendent, I think we need to have a conversation now because it's starting to get more and more people are starting to use it, and we need reassurance that people are going to be safe. So the advisory committee is a committee made up of, I'll say, early adopters. So the people that in the district, when we started to have the AI conversations, were interested in learning more about it. And so as an executive cabinet, we brought the tool to our meetings and we started to play around with it. And business looks at it differently than Ed Services. Ed Services was very intrigued and took it to their executive director meetings and gave their executive director some examples of how it could be used and how it could make their job more efficient. And so they began to take it to their our class teachers and our teachers on assignment that actually trained the classroom teachers. They got excited and said, we need to put this in our teachers' hands. And so they took it to their trainings and shared it with some teachers on how it could make their job more efficient. And we had some people that were very excited and we had some people that were very resistant to it. And so we didn't push too hard on those resistant people, but those people that were excited and want to learn more, we supported them and we send them to more trainings and brought in thought partners to help guide us in that thinking. And over time, their colleagues began to get more excited. And that ripple effect happened across the district to the point where the staff developers came to us and said, look, there's more and more people using it. We need to form a committee so we can talk about what platforms are they using? Are they approved by the purchasing department? Are they safe for student and private data usage? And all of these questions that really we didn't have the answers for. So we said, okay, we're going to pull a group together. So we pulled 40 to 50 early adopters together, spent a few months having a conversation, and then with our thought partners like you and Stefan and our legal counsel crafted this, developed this AI guidance that now has been approved by our Board of Education.
Working with Santa Ana Unified on creating and deploying their AI guidance and strategy over the past year has been such an absolute privilege, and we really look forward to continuing to share the work that's going on over here. I'll link the guidance for you in the notes, and one of the qualities that I particularly love about this particular AI guidance that we were able to create, that I have to say I think is actually really rare, and again really serves as a testament to the culture at Santa Ana, is the kindness and humanity in the guidance. The guidance is not a list of do's and don'ts. I mean, even the name is not like guidance, right? It's called your compass, your AI compass, and it's really designed to help you make safe and ethical decisions that will really unleash your creativity so that everyone, again, can focus on what matters most, because those are the things we often never have time for. And also remember, at the end of the day, Santa Ana believes that everyone should be an architect of their life and learning, and they know that they can't be with everyone at every moment, and nor does anybody want to create a surveillance type culture. But what we do really need are cultures where people are trusted, people are taught how to make safe and ethical choices, which is so important for our young people, everybody, but particularly young people, and also a place and a culture where people are inspired to create lives of meaning and purpose. Now, if you are listening to this episode, it's likely because you are already somebody who is leading the way, or you're somebody who wants to become an even better leader whose ideas are going to make an impact. Whether this episode is for you or whether this is something you are sharing with others, I asked Jerry to leave us with some advice for some immediate next steps that we can take after being inspired by this episode and thinking about how we can integrate these 5 leadership shifts.
So I think the first thing I would do is learn as much as you can about the platform and how it can help you. So one of the biggest complaints that I have is I never have enough time. I get thousands of emails. I have, meetings to go to. There's just not enough time. Well, very quickly, when we actually what happened was we were doing student listening sessions and then we did teacher listening sessions, and the students were saying they felt like the adults weren't connecting to the students. There was no empathy, that the adults in the system didn't care. So we went to the teachers and said, how come you don't care about the kids? And the teachers were like, well, we want to care. We just don't have time because the principals are pulling us to all these meetings and making all these compliance issues, and we have to do all this stuff. And then so we went to the principals and we said, how come you're not supporting your teachers? They're dying out there. They need time to meet with their kids. And the principals are looking at us going, you got to be kidding me. You're pulling us off to mandatory meetings all day. We have to write these reports. We don't have time to be in the classroom. And that's when it really hit me, thinking, I'm the problem. Executive cabinet is the problem. I wanted to blame the board, but we can't do that because they're not educated. I mean, they're elected officials, but the buck stops with the superintendent and executive cabinet. And so by realizing and understanding what the clogs in the systems were, I thought, okay, how can I learn this technology to make my job more efficient so it could free up my time to be able to engage more and find out what the barriers and what the issues are. So that's really what got me started, was how can it help me be a better superintendent? How can it help me understand this innovative state that we're in so I can guide my executive cabinet into making decisions that ultimately will impact the teachers and the students in the classroom. And so start with learning it yourself, start with experimenting with the various AI platforms, print out research articles or share digitally research articles on AI with your executive cabinet, and have ask that executive cabinet the same question you just asked me. Where do we get started? And have a conversation with your executive cabinet. I guarantee you somebody in that group will have an answer. And it's not overkill. You don't overthink it. Pick a starting point and move forward. And for us, we were so excited about it that my executive team decided to take it to their director meetings and ask the same question that we asked at executive cabinet. Here's an innovative platform. It's pretty new, interesting. Here's what I can do with it. Play around with it and see how it can help improve the work that you guys do. And from that point, it just accelerated. So a starting place for a couple of publications to begin to wrap your head around this would be World Economic Forum and McKinsey and Company. Landing in a place after 16 years of superintendency and realizing that what we've been doing in the past isn't working has forced us to reflect on those past practices and do our best to think different. So we've embraced the research behind the framework for strategic foresight, and we're looking at doing a better job of looking at what the research calls signals that are happening across the globe, no longer in my specific area, but globally. What are these signals and drivers that are having an impact on decisions that people are making across the globe? And I see it happening more and more in the business industry. So in Orange County, we have an Orange County CEO collaborative who is trying to create pathways and pipelines of AI certified workforce. And their goal is to make Orange County the Silicon Valley of artificial intelligence. And so that has been a driver for me, looking at what their needs are, because ultimately our CTE pathways will feed into the workforce that is no longer a regional or a nation workforce. It's a global workforce. And so the framework for strategic foresight helps us not just look at our region and our district, helps us look at the trends that are happening globally and developing different scenarios that are better than the worst case scenario. A future that we would like to see happen. We may not get there, but based on these signals and these drivers that are happening, help us make better decisions today that will improve the situation 5 years out. One example is chronic absenteeism, and we've had more money than we've ever had before, more resources, but yet after COVID, the chronic absenteeism is still on the rise. So what is happening? And so that and declining enrollment, those are two drivers that people better start paying attention to. And if declining enrollment is happening nationwide and chronic absenteeism is a big issue for all districts, the question that I have is, what are we doing about it? We can't be throwing more money in more people. The people aren't there, the money's not there. So what are we doing? If we don't do something dramatic and soon, then my fear is that public education will be a thing of the past. And if that's the case, this is like one of the worst case scenarios. If that's the case, what happens to our educated population and what happens to our economy?